a fair bit around. I think we've dealt with version Andrew, and I've got an aviation expert coming up just to see what a likely new entity could look like. Everyone says they're going to stay in the system. We'll see what that means and whether it is regional airlines. It'll be a big pressure point inside the coalition between the Libs and the Nats, as you well know. But National Cabinet, all this talk of easing restrictions, it's hard to get a sense of where the states are headed. Victoria is making all the noises that right now until the end of the year, and we're talking about the Melbourne Cup, we're talking about football finals, there will be no mass gatherings in Victoria. New South Wales looks like things are going to open up much faster and much sooner. They're talking about bars and restaurants and other things, or have I got all that wrong?
No, I thought the New South Wales Treasurer has been in the papers saying restaurants and cafes with social distancing, Peter, but I've been told in no uncertain terms by senior New South Wales government sources today that the chances of restaurants and cafes opening when restrictions ease in a month are zero. Buckley's was how it was put to me. It'll be trying to get schools more open. It'll be trying to get more retail stores open and a few other businesses. I think the Prime Minister said it himself, it's high value, low risk. That's what they're looking at. So this is very gradual, and when there's only 13 cases or 20 new cases a day in Australia of this virus, when a month ago there were 468 a day and climbing exponentially, I think it's time for a recalibration. And the Prime Minister said
that's
today...
a really good point. That's a really good point, Andrew, because I missed the numbers at the top of the show for people. 18 new cases in Australia today. I think, everyone can commend the Prime Minister, Greg Hunt and others for where we are today successfully, but no one's really sure what the end looks like. What does success look like? Because it's been very loosely, I think deliberately loosely defined. So I think it's much easier to keep people locked up and fingers crossed, starting up their businesses again if they know where they're sort of headed. And I think that if I was critical of one thing, it's lack of clarity about that.
Well, I guess he has to have the agreement of the states, and they all head in different directions. Certainly Victoria does. I mean, you wouldn't want to be a business in Victoria at the moment. You may as well send the year away, but it looks to me like they're going more for eradication than flattening the curve. The curve is so flattened it's not funny. And that's fair enough, but I'd like to hear that if that's what they're doing. Look at the thing that Scott Morrison said today, Peter, is he said there were 517,000 people who'd applied for the dole in the last 3 weeks. We used to talk about Paul Keating's 1 million unemployed. This is 500,000 overnight. And there are 70 deaths from this virus, as horrible as they are, in Australia. So for each death to this virus, there's been 7,500 people out of work, by my calculations. And that's not even counting the people who are going to go on JobKeeper. So you'd have to, Scott Morrison's talking about this coronavirus app, and then he'll feel safer about loosening the restrictions. But, gee, I don't see why we need to wait another 3 weeks for a few small loosenings at least. I really don't. But there seems to be this fear and paranoia that it's just going to blow up again.
Did you hear what Tikki said too about, she's hearing a lot of anecdotal stories in relation to JobKeeper, a lot of businesses, even with the capacity to apply for a loan from the bank, but to bridge them basically in terms of cash flow, are really reluctant to take on any further debt at this time, given, going back to the point we just made, they don't understand the PM's plan. They don't understand what success looks like, so they're not going to borrow money to keep on workers to get them through to the point that sometime in May the government might pay them back.
Yeah, May 1 it starts, doesn't it? So I guess the only good news out of that is it's only a week or two off, but yes, they've been asked to hang on, even while perhaps their doors are shut to these employees, so they can finally get the subsidy. And of course, that has meant they haven't been able to, and tens of thousands have gone to Social Security. It costs the government almost the same because there's similar payments once the tax is taken out of JobKeeper, except they're not tied to an employer.
I think people will go back in hindsight and think that there are some serious design flaws in JobKeeper that you and I have identified, and particularly for those with families and mortgages and things like that. Great win if you're one of the younger people on the casual wages. You'll actually get more in your pocket 9 times out of 10, but others it's nowhere near enough to make ends meet. Interestingly, I just talked to Tikki about oil prices in the US. President Trump said he's going to get out there and with these low prices buy up for the country's national reserve. You were saying today you think the same thing's going to happen here.
Yeah, Angus Taylor, the Energy Minister, confirmed that with me. He plans to do that. He plans to take advantage of the low oil prices and buy up, initially store it in the US, actually, where there's facilities. This is the quote he gave me. The government will take advantage of these historically low oil prices to enhance our fuel security. And there's talk of construction of a facility here to store the fuel here. So that's good news, I think, and quite intelligent policy by the government.
And look, just before we go, there's been some comments made by Marise Payne, the Foreign Minister, in the last couple of days that China really must be investigated in relation to coronavirus. The Prime Minister backed her in hard. The Chinese don't want a bar of it. Where's it going to end up? Well,
good on Scott Morrison and Marise Payne is all I can say. I mean, there's got to be an investigation. We've got to know if it's from the wet market or an accidental thing from the lab, as some papers speculate at the moment, and we've got to know what was kept secret. And, you know, I mean, China's got to be held to account like any other government. They've shut down the world economy and you know, hundreds of thousands of people have died. I mean, there's got to be some accountability here.
What's the stick, though? You know, if China doesn't want to cooperate, we've seen it plenty of times over in the past. How do we force them to the table?
Well, I guess there's got to be some sort of investigation without their cooperation. Difficult, especially when you can't get in the country to do it, but there has to be some action.
All right, got to leave it there. Thank you very much, Andrew Clennell.